There are many video games that I've played as a child and always wonder why they don't get talked about more. This especially happens when I'm feeling a bit nostalgic and decide to look back at some of my personal titles that I don't hear very often. Today's game is Tron 2.0, released back in 2003. This first-person shooter was developed by the legendary Monolith Studios, who are better known for their other works such as Blood, Fear, and even the more modern Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Even though it garnered an 84% Metacritic reception, I'm shocked that Tron 2.0 was able to get a digital re-release. Despite the lack of modern conversation around this title, is it a game worth playing or is it better left for the memory banks? Also want to quickly mention that I am playing this game using my Windows XP machine, so this is my first video on the channel to be used with the humble PC. I used Fraps to record this, which was a bit of a throwback to what I used for my older videos. I was having issues playing the game on my normal Windows 10 machine, so do keep that in mind if you do want to try it out yourself. You may need to do a bit of configuration on your end. As the title suggests, Tron 2.0 is the sequel to the original Tron movie back in 1982. Originally, it was supposed to be canon, but was eventually retconned into an alternative timeline by the movie Tron Legacy. That's a whole nother topic entirely, so let's stay the course with this game on hand. Like many games, you start by choosing your difficulty level. In this game, you take on the role of Jet Bradley, the son of NCOM programmer Alan Bradley. Alan and several other characters such as Mithria have the original actors reprise their roles for this game, which is pretty awesome for fans of the film. Other characters from the film also make an appearance, but I'll leave that up to you to find out. Things eventually go awry and Mithria digitizes you into a computer and the adventure begins properly with a way too long tutorial that can thankfully be skipped. This is really when you'll first notice the game's unique retro computer art style. It's honestly incredible and was way ahead of its time. The only thing I wish is that the game supported widescreen resolutions natively, but I overall can't complain here. Also, it's a bit overwhelming at times due to the colors, but it's still a visual spectacle despite its age. As expected, combat is a huge part of the gameplay. Your main weapon of choice will be a disc that can be used for both attack and blocking the enemy's discs. You can also control it mid-flight, but it feels a lot more cumbersome than in practice. Still, mastery of the disc will be important as many of the weapons here drain a ton of energy, which is a resource used for basically everything. It's pretty fun being able to headshot an enemy ricocheting a disc off the wall for that extra coolness factor. Thankfully, you do have some other weapons to play with. One of my favorites is the sniper rifle, known in the game as the LOL. The gun is very effective in keeping your distance between the enemy and pulling off headshots. Leveling up this weapon also increases its damage potential, which is always great to do. The rest unfortunately got very little use, but I did occasionally use the shotgun for those close quarters encounters. Be warned though, this game is not for the faint of heart. Even playing on normal difficulty, I died far too often and just didn't bother trying to keep track of it. The enemies have this BS hit scan, so be prepared to be taken down as soon as they see you. There is a bit of stealth element in this game, but it's very underdeveloped and just not worth it most of the time. It's also one of those games where you'll need to quickly save after every encounter, which is what I did basically all the time. There are also RPG elements to help give yourself a bit of sense of progression. When your version number goes up by 1 full point, you can add points to health, energy, weapon efficiency, transfer rate, and processor. Weapons and abilities can also be assigned to you, provided that you have enough space to fit them. Each program comes in 3 different levels: Alpha, Beta, and Gold. Alpha programs take up 3 spaces, while Gold programs only take up 1. You can find more advanced programs out there in the world, or can level them up for certain programs. It definitely is a fun system and gives a bit of a System Shock or even a Deus Ex vibe with this feature. Despite the unique setting and features, the flow of the levels are pretty simple. You'll need to gain various permissions either from enemies, from crates, or from certain NPCs. These permissions are then used to progress through the level by opening up doors, activating switches, and whatever else is needed to beat each level. What I find a bit tedious is how you'll lose all your permissions each level, so it ends up being a bit of a glorified keycard system without outright saying it. Eventually, you'll reach the light cycle segments, which are a staple of the Tron franchise. The goal is pretty simple: be the last one standing by forcing your opponents to crash or with certain power-ups. As you ride, a trail is left behind that creates a wall. This can be used to get your opponents to crash, but can also bring your demise if you're not careful. The concept of this game is fine and you can set up a LAN connection, it's still pretty fun with others. However, you'll have to deal with the straight up broken AI in this mode. It somehow knows everything you're doing and can make crazy reflexes, but then crashes randomly once enough time has passed. You'll eventually realize that the best strategy is just to stay as far away as possible from the computer, and it'll eventually get itself stuck somehow and you'll win. For the story itself, I was invested for the most part and wanted to see how everything came together at the end. The problem, however, comes in the form of the pacing. The game is just too long for its own good. According to howlongtobeat.com, the game clocks in around 12 hours. While it doesn't seem like a long time, the story feels like it should have ended about halfway through. Without spoiling anything, there's a huge event that takes place that feels like the end of the game. Unfortunately, you'll realize that you're only halfway done as the game continues to slowly feed you more information. And I think that's ultimately my main issue with this game. Despite the unique art style, cool narrative, and some good humor throughout, the game is just far too repetitive for its own good. The game throws everything at you at once, then really doesn't do anything that interesting after a while. Once you find the weapons you want and the programs that work for you, you rarely have a reason to change it unless the game forces you to reconfigure it. I would have been happier if the game ended about 6 to 8 hours in, but it was just stretched to reach an artificial game length. As much as I really wanted to, I just can't recommend this game. As a first-person shooter, there are just far better titles out there from both an action and puzzle perspective. Collecting new weapons and abilities to play with are fun, but ultimately underwhelming with how quickly energy is depleted. The light cycle segments are fun with others, but the poorly programmed AI ruins any single-player enjoyment from it. I really hope this game withstood the test of time, especially for its awesome art style and impressive graphical fidelity that still looks great today. It's just far too frustrating for its own good, as I lost any desire to complete this one. Here's to hoping I review better games in the future. Thank you guys for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.